Howdy, Joseph.
Hi, hello, how are you?
We heard the news,
We're quite enthused.
and the only thing to do
What should we do?
is strum this guitar
And sing to the stars.
and serenade you.
You survived, and that's true. I thought I'd send a little wish to you.
That is some mighty fine fiddling. But hey, let's pick it up.
All right.
That's more like it. Yeehaw!
Play it for Joseph.
All right, now where were we? Okay, you're still standing, and that's pretty great.
Joseph.
You know what? You kicked its butt. It's time to celebrate.
Joseph.
Birds will jingle jangle.
It's time to do-si-do.
So grab yourself a partner and let's see go.
Cause it's a
Jingle jangle here and a jingle jangle there. A jingle jangle inspiration everywhere. A jingle jangle here and a jingle jangle there.
a jingle jangle inspiration everywhere.
All right. That's how you celebrate.
Joseph Jaffe. Why does that name sound so suspiciously familiar? Maybe because your secret screen name is Not Famous for You. What do you mean by not famous for you, Joseph? Chris Hansen here of Hansen versus Predators. To catch a predator and have a seat with Chris Hansen. Now, Joseph Jaffe, I'm going to need you to have a seat right over there. See some suspicious activity. Something about a television show, doing interviews, 200 guests, something like that. But Joseph, you are not famous. And the people on your show, well, they're not infamous like my shows. But remember, Jaffe is not famous. So let's keep it that way. I'll be watching and listening. Behave.
Woody-hoo! Woody-hoo! Out here in the stream, as in the streaming era, I fight for my dreams. I get my heart into my living.
You encourage drinking or marijuana use on the show?
I don't need a fight, cause Evelyn's right. Or you could sponsor an emu. I'm Batman.
That's
Here's
your
the
tweetable
comedian.
moment, folks. That's your tweetable moment. If Mark Zuckerberg makes a metaverse, is that Web3? No, it's Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse.
He's like us. He's flawed.
Just a little segue.
That's some dope shit, dude. That's really, really nice.
Woody-hoo! Woody-hoo! Yes. What is the CEX that we're all seeing? It's going to be revealed in about, I don't know, less than a minute. But how are you? It is Monday, April 11th, and I'm still standing, and that's just great. It's time to celebrate. 2021 did not get me with open heart surgery, with that little 19 in the air. A little nasal though, a little blocked. Maybe it's April showers bring May flowers. Nothing wrong with that. Well, you want to know what CEX is? I'm about to tell you. In fact, this show, and for the month of April, we are sponsored by CEX, by the Creator Economy Expo. My good friend Joe Pulizzi and also Mr. Brian Clark are putting together an event by creators for creators, and I guess I'm a creator as well. Why not? Let me be a creator. Let me stand up and roar. My guest today, Nora Dunn, she is a creator. What determines who a creator is, and more importantly, how will they be monetized? I think that's the question. And the good news is, in Web3, there are ways and there are means. So you know what? Let's do that. Let's put up a little logo to celebrate CX. We've got 1, we've got 2, we've got 3. Nora might be in there, but she's real tiny. We'll make her full screen shortly as well. But let's get back to CX. May 2nd through 4th in Phoenix, Arizona. I am going to be there. And there's going to be a way for you to come as well, not just to be there, but actually to get a whole bunch of benefits, exclusive benefits, $200 off. More on that shortly, and a couple of little experiential moments as well. But today we are going to focus on we'll focus on Nora Dunn, the professional hobo. I love that branding, that personal branding. She is my guest today. John Johnson tomorrow, meaning Tuesday. And those are only 2 CX speakers, but there will be a whole bunch more during the month of April. And they will give you a sneak peek, a little preview in terms of what you might expect, what they're going to be talking about. Of course, hopefully you'll feel like you know them from them being on the show. And then you'll be able to spend a little bit of time with them, I'm sure, as well. Access to assets are very much part of what this creator economy is all about. It used to be that everyone was aloof and detached and sitting on their ivory tower and talking at and to and down to, but now it is really and truly about being part of a broader conversation. And speaking of conversations, I'm thrilled to have Baratunde Thurston on the show on Wednesday, and then Zoe. I still have to find out if we're going with Zoe Scammon, because Scammon doesn't sound very good as well, and I'm sure she is no scammer. Zoe will be on the show on a Thursday. Now, at the moment, I'm still planning who will be on the show on Friday for NFT Fridays, but I can tell you that on Friday, we will be raffling off a seed of gratitude as part of the Gratitude Gang. And Erwin Benedicto Valencia was my guest on Friday, and wow. Did you know, and I didn't know, but did you know that gratitude is the only emotion of all the emotions that has no negative polarity? It is the only one. And as he said, actually, there is one that comes close, and that is mindfulness, but full mindless. Mindfulness, not mindless. I'm mindless. Full mindfulness is the only time that there is almost zero, if not zero, negative polarity. So what do you have to do to get a free NFT? You just have to subscribe to the show, and you're watching it right now. So why wouldn't you subscribe? Go ahead then and paste your username in my Not Famous channel, my giveaways channel on my Not Famous blog. Did I say blog? You know what? I meant Discord. What is a blog? I don't even know if Nora has a blog anymore. Are blogs dead? Are blogs alive? We're going to have to ask an expert that is jet setting around the world. But yes, paste your YouTube username in the giveaways channel in my Discord, and we will do that drawing. But now it's time for our seated soliloquy. And the seated soliloquy today is always, as always, connected to my guest, and it's called Roots. You know, I have to tell you that I am envious, jealous of digital nomads, of professional hobos, and actually Americans in general. I mean, I am an American now through I'm naturalized, I'm a citizen, but I wasn't born here. And one of the things that always has amazed me about Americans is how they seem to move around. They are nomadic as a people. And what I mean by that is we think about things like sleepaway camp for 3 weeks, for 5 weeks, for 7 weeks. My kids go away for 7. Well, now 2 of them have aged out, but they all went to 7-week sleepaway. I mean, I would not even leave home for a weekend, let alone, sleep in a tent, for God's sake. I'm a Four Seasons type of guy, not someone who has to live in the Four Seasons or endure the Four Seasons, literally. And then there's this idea of college. I went to the University of Cape Town for 3 of my 4 years. I went home. I was still at home. Why would I move out? There's no need to go to res or be in a dorm. But certainly here in the US, I mean, my kids go to college in St. Louis, in Miami, and we live on the East Coast. It's another element of that. I am a homebody. I am someone who sets down their roots and builds community and doesn't want to leave. And yet I wonder, to what degree I'm missing out. That there's a world out there waiting to be discovered. There is a world out there that is begging for, inviting the ability to travel. Now, let's go back to one more example. To be a successful executive working for a global multinational, you cannot get to and above a certain level if you aren't prepared to be a professional nomad, if you aren't prepared to be doing a stint in Germany and in Japan and in Africa and South America, etc. That's part of the price you pay in order to become truly representative of and for a global organization. But that means uprooting yourself, moving around, sending your kids to different schools, learning new languages, and really pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. So what does the world look like now post-COVID? Where will we set down our roots? How steadfast or permanent will we be, or how nomadic will we be? For the people that stayed and had roots in New York City, they ended up almost being jailed in tiny little overpriced apartments. What would happen if we truly moved around, utilized incredible services like Airbnb, and made sure that this life we have, and it's the only life we have and our time is limited, is one that is spent being in the world, seeing the world, and being able to contribute to the world as well. Well, I mean, who better to comment on that than Nora Dunn, who is my guest today, and a little bit of background on Nora. And she has such an amazing bio, and I would just love to share a little bit of that with you. So, Nora Dunn, she is the professional hobo. She sold everything she owned, including a busy financial planning practice, to travel the world in 2006. She traveled full-time for 12 years, and since then, she has a home base from which she travels as and when she wants, for weeks to months at a time, many times a year. She's considered a pioneer in the travel blogging arena, and I mentioned blogging earlier, maybe that was not just Freudian, and an OG digital nomad. I love that. Though ironically, if her fashion sense is any indication, she's not generally a trend setter. I would say au contraire. On her travel blog, theprofessionalhobo.com, she not only shares her adventures and misadventures alike, but she is radically honest about the full-time or long-term travel lifestyle and the realities of working remotely while traveling. As a former financial planner, she demonstrates that full-time travel can be financially sustainable, and she helps people design their ideal travel and work lifestyles. With a knack for details, she loves helping people with all the lifestyle logistics and ensuring people know the things they don't know they didn't know before they get out there and realize they should have known. I hope you were paying attention. Nora has been featured in print, on television, radio, podcasts, and online in outlets like Forbes, Condé Nast Traveler, Business Insider, Lonely Planet, and Oprah. And Joseph Jaffe is not famous. She hosts the remote work and travel show where she features ordinary people who have extraordinary travel lifestyles and remote careers to get the real dirt on the work, travel, lifestyle. Now, please draw your attention to the main screen and watch this.
Hi there, Nora Dunn, aka the Professional Hobo. Greetings from Antigua in Guatemala. I am giddy with delight because I am currently standing on the Deccan Odyssey in India. This is the most luxurious train in the world. I'm Nora Dunn, and this is Hong Kong. Hello, Nora Dunn of the Professional Hobo. Greetings from Ubud in Bali. I'm standing in front of Lakshmi Vilas Palace. The Caribbean island of Grenada has an unofficial national pastime, and it's called liming. Doesn't really have anything to do with the citrus. So I'm on a mission to discover what liming is and how to do it. I'm currently in Ecuador, tucked away at a little retreat center in the mountains. So Anthony Bourdain referred to the Robot Restaurant show as the greatest show in the history of entertainment. Now, I suspect he was being a little bit facetious.
Wow, I mean, like, I think I've determined now that I'm just plain jealous and that I hate you. That's what I've determined. I'm so jealous. I can't keep it inside.
Well, you wouldn't be the first person. I've actually had people ask to come in my luggage. I've had random strangers contact me. They obviously are familiar with my content and whatnot, so they feel like they know me. And they literally will send me an email and say, please, will you travel with me? What they don't understand is traveling with someone is basically like living with them. So they ask me to move in with them on the first date. And so I'm
Yeah,
my answer varies.
Just a little forward, right? Which is, hi, we've just met, but I love your content and I'd love to move in with you.
Yeah, exactly. And my response is, we could do coffee first. I'd like that.
Well, maybe you can even come and join at CEX where I'll be doing drinks with people that register. So thank you for you're actually the first CEX speaker that's actually going to be on the show. And I love it because it's actually a model that I think has a lot of legs, which is this ability for a speaker to actually be introduced to the potential attendees so that you almost feel like you know them in advance and that you're not being exposed to them cold. So I'm sure when we see each other, we will be the best of friends, although I will not propose moving in with you. How about that?
Coffee works, though. We could do coffee. I'm in for
Coffee.
that. I'll say yes. You have a pre-approved approval of the coffee date.
Coffee, drinks, anything you want. Nora, we're going to get into this whole subject, which I am fascinated with, very, very fascinated with. I actually had Julie Rose on my show, and she's also a digital nomad, and I've spoken with several people as well about this idea. It is a trend. It is not a fad. It is something that more and more people are embracing, and especially amidst us coming out of this period of time where we look at the inefficient travel of commuting and say, what the hell were we thinking? But before we get into that, let's have a little bit of fun and find out some fun facts about the professional nomad. So we went in the professional hobo, I should say, and I want to talk to you about the branding of that. But before we do that, let's get into these fun facts. For example, how many people know about you that you danced with a 10-foot sandwich in a DreamWorks film with Julianne Moore, Woody Harrelson, and Laura Dern? Looks like you were the star of the show, according to this very badly photoshopped poster. So tell us about what kind of a sandwich was it? Who led? How did you get involved in this?
Well, in a former life, I used to be a professional actor, singer, dancer. But I actually decided I had to quit professional dancing because of a hip injury. This was I was about 20 at the time, so very young yet. And, I kind of looked at this industry and I thought, wow, do I really want to pursue being a professional actor and a singer in an industry where basically, statistically speaking, I'm going to be waiting tables for the rest of my life, waiting for a big break that might never come. So what I did was I went out and I made it in business first. And then in my late 20s or mid 20s, I returned to the arts because I enjoyed it and not because I had to pay rent with it. And that seemed to be the difference. So I would show up for auditions and I'd be like, hire me, don't hire me. I don't care. It's really fun. And this was one of the first gigs I got when I was in that stage of my life. The prize winner of Defiance, Ohio, it's a DreamWorks picture, but you may not have heard of it because nothing got blown up. So it wasn't a guy flick and nobody fell in love. So it wasn't a chick flick, but it is a very engaging story that is based on a true story of a woman played by Julianne Moore, who raised a family of 10 children in the 50s doing something called contesting. And I'm a reoccurring theme through about 15 minutes in the middle of the movie. Look for the girl in the green dress and you will find me. And if you look really carefully, the first time you see me is on TV dancing with a 10-foot sandwich. I did not get to sample the sandwich because if you've ever been on a movie set, you'll know that craft services is way too good. So I was very full and I was wearing a corset at the time, but I trust the sandwich was good.
So a professional contester. I like that. I mean, I actually think if people focus more on being professional contesters, they do very well. You know, even in the whole Web3 NFT space right now, if you're actually paying attention with all these communities and discords and, you know, that you're joining in, you know, our mutual friend, Mr. Joe Pulizzi and his Tilt community, you can actually get a lot of free stuff or, you know, like I used to say, like I do say, free I just had to censor myself. This is, you know, high budget production over here. But you can get, and it's actually something that you've, not only you've proven, but you've written on it. And we'll talk about that in terms of surviving and thriving on the road with free accommodation. There's a lot of stuff that you can get for free if you're paying attention.
Indeed. And I actually stumbled into the whole world of free accommodation as I was just learning what the travel lifestyle was like. Let's get it right. Back in 2006, we would call that the pioneer days of both travel blogging and the digital nomad lifestyle. Words like digital nomad didn't even yet exist. Remote work was not even yet a thing. So I felt like I was the only person in the world ever to try to travel long term and earn a living while I was doing it. But of course, I was not the only person to do it, but I made every mistake along the way. But the free accommodation was certainly not a mistake. And that was something that actually I stumbled into it. Someone told me about woofing. I researched woofing and then learned that there's a whole world of volunteering and trade for free accommodation. And then I found house sitting, and then I found hospitality exchanges. And then I found living on boats, which I did for 3 months in the Caribbean on 5 different countries, and on it goes. And in fact, actually, I saved over $100,000 in my first 10 years of travel just by getting my accommodation for free. Because when you travel, accommodation is going to be your biggest expense. So if you can save that expense, all the better. And just in case you thought I was saving, I was staying in like cardboard shacks on the side of the road. I assure you, I was actually staying in some pretty glorious accommodations that might not have been affordable any other way than free.
So I was just, you know, you kind of had me and lost me at woofing. Was it woofing or whiffing or?
Yes, woofing. I had the same response. So this woman came to buy my couch when I was selling everything. And she said, she was asking about what my plans were. And she said, "Oh, are you going to do any woofing?" I said, "What?" She said, "Woofing." And I said, "What?" I thought she had a cold. What are you saying? She said, "Woofing." You're right. It's an acronym, Worldwide Work on Organic Farms.
Worldwide work on, but not woofing, right?
Right. Well, to woof, I think, is the verb.
To woof. You see?
See?
To woof.
Yeah, right.
To woof or not to woof? Is that the question I ask you?
So to woof would be to volunteer on an organic farm in exchange for free accommodation, sometimes
okay.
Food. Now, my thumbs are not green. I'm not an organic farmer. I eat organic food. I'm not really good at farming it. So that really didn't interest me. But as I started to do a little bit research, I realized that there was a whole world of opportunities to volunteer and trade for free accommodation. So, I mean, I've done everything from designing marketing plans to cooking for large groups to doing promotional stuff to running hostels to milking goats. There's a variety of things that I did.
To, for example, training to be a shaman. That's another thing that you've done as well. So here's another interesting fun fact about you, which is, and that's why I hate you, because I'm like, you know, I say that with love, because I'm so desperate to go to Peru, to go to Machu Picchu. I'm quite frankly, I'd love to, well, I was going to say before today, I would love to meet a shaman, but I guess I am meeting one right now. And pursue pursue there's something inside, whether it's a demon or whether it's just a subconscious that I believe can tap into something so much more powerful. But tell us a little bit about your not your woofing, but your shamanic experiences.
Well, that was certainly not something that I did in exchange for free accommodation. This was, I think I can preface this whole episode by saying most of the really amazing things that I've done with my life were not things I could possibly have planned in advance. They were just things that happened. An opportunity came. I saw it. I jumped on it. And there we have it. And this was one of those things. I went to Peru. There was a unique, kind of like a serendipitous opportunity that brought me to Peru that I shan't bore you with. And I was well aware of, I'd learned about plant medicine. I'd heard about ayahuasca many years prior. I had been quietly calling it into my life, but not in any sort of urgent sense. But I knew when I was heading to Peru that I might have this experience. Little would I realize that the place that I was staying in Peru was next door to someone who would actually, a shaman who would end up helping me change my life dramatically through my own healing with plant medicine, specifically ayahuasca and San Pedro. And out of that sprung into a very organic apprenticeship that happened. So I apprenticed with him for 2 years and worked with him. I was his assistant in all the ceremonies, and I did all the things. And then I moved on from Peru and ended up being another shaman's assistant in Ecuador for about 9 months. Until eventually I decided that I needed a break. That was an amazing experience for me, but perhaps my path in life was not to become a plant medicine shaman, but rather to take everything that I learned through my very deep work with plant medicine and to apply it to different areas of my life, and hopefully to bring that the lessons therein to other people in creative ways.
Amazing. And if you would like to do ayahuasca with myself and Nora, all you have to do, I'm joking, I couldn't resist that, but asterisk, may not.
We could make this a bonus. This could be like a bonus CEX event, you know, like come into our ecospheres and
may not be accurate or even legal in the state of Arizona. But more importantly, if you do register for CEX May 2nd through 4th in Phoenix, Arizona, and you use code Jaffe or Not Famous, you're going to get $200 off your fee. But wait, that's not all. I'm going to be doing a few other things as well, which I thought kind of would be interesting. First of all, we're going to do drinks with me, 1 hour private drinks with myself, and maybe Nora will even join us. You never know. We know that she likes her coffee and she doesn't like forward proposals. And in addition to that, I am going to be doing a live taping of my show. And if you do register using code Jaffe or Not Famous, you will also get a little walk-on role, a little walk-on appearance where you can introduce yourself. I'll ask you a couple of questions. You can plug your company if you want. You can even dance with a 10-foot sandwich. How about that? So a little.
Are we going to make the sandwich? We have to decide what goes into the sandwich.
We will have to talk to craft services first. So we will see. Now, Nora, let's get back to your life as a professional hobo, because there's one more, I don't even want to call it a fun fact. It's an unbelievable fact, which is you've actually survived 3 natural disasters and 3 tropical diseases. It's probably, I don't know whether it's, and I think it's fair to say it's not all free accommodation and and cappuccinos at some cafe. I mean, tell us about the disasters, the diseases, as much as you possibly feel comfortable to. But this is kind of amazing to realize, how this has shaped your entire life and life experience.
Well, I like to think that these things come in 3s. So just in case you're worried that when I come to CEX, I'm going to energetically bring some natural disaster our way, I'm done with all that. We're good. So rest assured, we're going to be fine.
Thank goodness.
And it was actually, it's funny you said it's not all cappuccinos and delightful things. I have an article on my website that was brought on by a reader who contacted me and said, Nora, I really feel like this whole full-time travel lifestyle, there's more to it than what I'm reading on the internet by a lot of people, yourself included. I don't think it's that idealistic. There's got to be some dirt. And she said, tell me the dirt. And I said, are you ready? I'll tell you the dirt. So I created an article on my website called Brace Yourself, Travel Isn't All Roses and Lollipops. And what it is a roundup of all the really crazy things that has happened to me on the road. 3 natural disasters, 3 tropical diseases, 2 I had a 3-3-2-1. Anyway, I was robbed. I've had various thefts. I survived a fatal accident, and I like to say I've recovered from more breakups than I care to admit to. But the reality is, all of these things, well, some of these things anyway, are the things. It's the stuff of life. But when it happens on the road, when it happens when you're traveling, it's in Technicolor. And so the first natural disaster, I won't go through all of them, of course, but the first natural disaster was one that I was very close to, but not in the middle of. And it was, I accidentally started an international NGO to help the victims of this disaster because I had never been so physically close to something so dramatic. And, growing up in Canada, not a lot of bad stuff really ever happened, but I heard of, earthquakes and cyclones and all these things happening in other parts of the world. And my heart would go out to these people, and then I would get busy with my own life again. So when I found myself really there and feeling the effects of what was actually 2 million people who were without food, shelter, or water, I wanted to do something because I this wasn't something that I could ignore anymore. 1 year later, I survived Australia's worst ever natural disaster to that date, which were the Victorian bushfires. And a little bit later in New Zealand, I got 2 cyclones. That was always fun. And the tropical diseases included dengue fever, literally the day I broke up with somebody too. That was fun. But I like to say, and because these are not bragging points for me at all, as you can imagine, but I like to say that life's misadventures make for the best stories with a dose of hindsight. And I am a storyteller, so I like to be able to tell the stories and ideally come out with some outcome that is more than just look at me, like let's learn something from this, or at least let's entertain. So I have some entertaining stories, I'll tell you that much.
There's a lot to unpack from that, and which I feel is so profound and a unique perspective that only you can present. The first is this idea of when stuff happens to you on the road, as you say, everything is now in Technicolor. I just came back last week. I was in Denmark. My daughter's studying abroad, so I was in Copenhagen. I was in London, and in many respects, you think about getting sick. You think about actually the very first night. Typical my daughter. Hopefully, she's not watching. She, in an entire semester abroad, she dropped her. Well, she says it fell out of her pocket. She dropped her phone into the canal in Copenhagen that had her driver's license, that had her credit cards, that had her phone, obviously. And that was literally her first night. And the thing is, you're so right. Well, I'm combining 2 things. One is suddenly you feel now that you feel so much more foreign. You feel so much more homesick. You feel so much more detached and out of control. And then the other part of it is, as we say to our kids and to each other, you'll laugh about it one day. And they're like, thanks, but I'm not laughing about it right now. But it is so true that everything that happens to you, in fact, is happening for you.
That's another great way of putting it. And really, it's up to us to make of every experience what we want.
Right.
And to communicate. Like I could say, oh my gosh, oh, poor me. Like we tell stories with a subconscious desire for something. Sometimes that something is attention. Sometimes it's pity. Sometimes it's notoriety. Sometimes it's accolades. Sometimes it's just the sheer joy of being able to connect with other people. But if you tell it, oh my gosh, this was so terrible that this happened to me, but you can also put a different spin on it. And oh, look, I'm still here to tell this story. It was actually kind of funny. I dropped my phone. It was because of this, that, or the other. Or when I would get my new ID, this and that happened. I met this person, and that led to that experience. We all have the ability to frame and reframe our experiences in our life. And I have enjoyed telling a story and retelling the story of my life in different ways and my experiences. And that's one thing that long-term travel, 16 years of being a digital nomad, has taught me, is it's given me a whole new perspective on experiences that I've already had. It inspired me to tell my story in a new way.
And I don't know, speaking of experiences, whether the Wi-Fi is a little bit off on your end or mine, but you were breaking up a little bit there, and I caught I know I caught certain elements of what you were saying, but that is my not so subtle way of saying I hope it isn't on your end. But we will see while I fill a little bit as well. But I do love what you were saying, Nora, and one thing in particular that really connected with me there is, when we're in the moment, we don't find the good in it. We don't find the happiness in it. We don't. We're panicking. We're anxious. Our mental health is being threatened. And it's almost like, I feel like it's almost a superpower, maybe something that you've learned on the road, which is when these things are happening, is to even in the moment, even when you're in fight or flight mode, to find and recognize the spark that will become the story of tomorrow. But I imagine that it's not easy to be able to always in the moment find the good, find the silver lining, right?
And I think you're absolutely right. In some experiences, it's easier than others, but certainly those of hindsight and applied practicing, you can find that. A perfect example actually was when I had similar to your daughter, an experience where I lost everything. And when I was in Cusco, where I had been, of course, living in the Sacred Valley of Peru, but Cusco, the other side of the mountains from the Sacred Valley, I had become complacent, to be perfectly honest. And I had a purse, and I had everything. I had my phone and all my credit, a bunch of cash, and all the things. And after travel, I knew better than to do that. I knew better than to have everything in one purse, even properly secured on my body. I'll talk about that in travel security presentations and whatnot. So when I got in, I lost everything in that. And I could have cried a river of tears in that moment, but instead I found myself immediately unbelievably grateful for the friends who were with me, who could get me back home. Right? I didn't have a phone number to call anybody. I didn't have any cash or bank cards or anything. I was in Cusco. I was hours from where, I mean, had I tried to walk home, it would have taken, I don't know, 12 hours or something. So it would have been a good experience. But instead, they took care of me. They took me home. They cooked me dinner while I called out to get all my cards replaced and took care of all that. They were actually concerned for my well-being than I was in that moment. I was so grateful for the backups that I'd already developed, and the fact that I had someone to bring new credit cards down. So many things aligned in a wonderful way in that experience for me to even deepen the relationships that I had with certain people in my life. But I could have told that story a very different way as well, as you well, because I just had everything stolen. Like, gratitude is not usually the first thing you think of.
I actually remember getting mugged with a knife being gently stuck into my midriff in Amsterdam with my daughter. I said my daughter, I meant my sister, who was actually living there at the time. I don't want you to think like my poor daughter is like she's she's just had one incident, but I was actually with my sister. And I remember her freaking out in the moment, and I was like completely calm, etc. And as they walked off with my, they took 20 guilders. That's all I had, fortunately, and maybe unfortunately, because sometimes you need to at least give them a little bit for them to walk away. And she was freaking out, and she was like, I don't feel safe in the city that I'm living, and things are terrible. And I was like, you can't buy a mugging for 20 guilders. I mean, that was a good price that we got to like kind of like experience it and see how I reacted in the moment. I was calm. I even remember saying, take whatever you want, but please just leave my wallet with me because it's got my passport, etc. And I just had the presence of mind to basically say, this is not important to you, but whatever you need, you take, etc. They could see I wasn't a threat. And I actually, like in the moment, said, hey, man, that was the greatest mugging you could have bought for 20 guilders. I mean, in South Africa, you have to pay at least 40.
See, there you go. Deal. See what I did there? That was good.
I almost saw what you did there, and I'm hoping people can see it properly because the connection is still a little weak. But Nora, and which is terrible. I hope we're in the moment right now, so we may as well just enjoy it too, and hopefully it will transpire that actually I should have paid my internet bill this week. But you know what? That's the problem with roots. You keep your roots, and you have, I don't know, just trying to segue. So Nora, I found this quote for you. I always find a quote for my guests, and I always try and find something that's very much pertinent to them. And this is what I've found for you. It's a very simple one, and it says, "The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page." And I have never met this person who actually wrote this quote, but apparently Augustine of Hippo, a great show guest, world traveler, known as a professional hobo. I'm not sure that any of that is true. But isn't that a great way to kind of just summarize everything, is realizing that when you don't travel, you are depriving yourself of the full picture, the full story.
Absolutely. And I think, you could definitely illustrate and build on that quote by suggesting that perhaps every destination you visit is a new page of that book. But what I found was really interesting is it was only when I left my hometown and my home country that I learned so much more about it. And I learned about it by virtue of gaining an understanding that there is no one way to do something. There's no one way to approach a conversation. There's one way to reach enlightenment, to dream, to shop, to do all the type of life. In various parts of the world, everybody approaches differently. And when I understood there is no right way, wrong way, I was able to let go of that. I was able to gain a whole new perspective on where I came from and what I've learned on the road. And the really nice thing about something like that is when you get a really broad perspective of a variety of different things, you can then handpick the elements that you like and incorporate that into your life and your habits and your way of being and doing it. So that is, I think, the element of moving from one page to a whole book. A bigger picture, sometimes the story changes.
Right, and it's not just a narrative, a chronological narrative, but there are other arcs as well with respect to, creator to creator, storyteller to storyteller, in terms of character evolution, in terms of personal growth, in terms of being able to almost, go back to the hero's journey itself, recognize that our life is that book too. And if we're able to bring it from black and white into technicolor through the power of travel, that is a richer perspective. I mean, I'll give you, Nora, just a very quick example. I just came back from from Copenhagen, and the moment we arrived, or in Copenhagen, the mask went off because there is no status of COVID there. There is nothing, so they don't have it in terms of part of their lives at the moment, other than any more so than flu or a cold. And I never wore a mask until I got back into the airport. And I said to my daughter, I was like, this is kind of like crazy. It's weird. It takes time. I'm in the subway. I don't know what. And I said, how is it that Denmark got like this? And she said, well, the people here are very trusting of their government. When their government says wear a mask, they wear a mask. When the government says get vaccinated, they get vaccinated. And it was just the whole perspective that allowed me to see what we've been living in and enduring and going through and battling through and trying to understand and reconcile here in the US. But it certainly made me, my one takeaway, that perspective that you allude to, is the fact, gee, this is kind of interesting what happens when we actually trust, period, and to a lesser extent trust in our government, which is a much bigger, more polarizing and more difficult issue. But if I hadn't traveled out the US, how would I see this and experience it and be able to actually come back with a point of view?
Absolutely. And I would go so far as to say that was a cultural experience for you, because that's a cultural observation that you
Yeah.
made of the people of Denmark. We're painting with broad strokes here, but you could say that they are more trusting of the government and more willing to do what they have to do for the greater good. In Canada as well. I mean, I would say, generally speaking, again, very broad brush, Canadians are pretty obedient. So when the pandemic initially hit and everything locked down, we locked down with it. And we were cool with that. And, well, as cool as you can be with a horrendous lockdown and a pandemic and the uncertainty of the future. But we were effective, at least with the first wave. It kind of went sideways after that, but I shan't bore you with that story. But certainly it is very interesting to see how various cultures dealt with the pandemic. Right? That's a perfect example. The same set of circumstances was dealt to everybody in the world, and yet every country did it very differently. And that's something that speaks to the governments as well as the people and the cultures, the underlying cultures they're in.
So Nora, one of the most interesting things I think about your journey is that it isn't just about being a digital nomad, because that's not for everyone. Not everyone's just going to be able to say, hey, let's live out of a suitcase for years upon years upon years, get free accommodation, and endure some personal diseases and disasters. I mean, it sounds amazing for everyone, but not everyone wants that.
Well, and I just have to say, it's not all part and parcel. Like if you do sell everything and live out of a suitcase, you're not guaranteed to have the natural disasters. You got to pay extra for that,
Well, it's the same thing like the mugging as well. For 20 guilders, you can get your own natural disaster. But here's what you actually have been able to really become a bit of a subject matter expert in, and that is specifically recognizing, I think, that there is a straight line, a red thread, if you will, between being a digital nomad and this idea of remote working and being a remote worker. And the Venn diagram where the two come together is, guess what? You can actually travel the world and still do your job and still be able to find something and do something that actually allows you to say, wait a second, why did I need to be rooted or shackled or anchored to a physical location? I can actually get the best of both worlds. So I would love for you to talk briefly about this Venn, this overlap, or at least this framing between the professional hobo / digital nomadic life and remote working.
Absolutely. And I think that we're in a semantic transition regarding some of these definitions. But if we take a look at the absolute purest definition of a digital nomad, digital nomads were initially, it's the definition of a digital nomad is someone who is nomadic. So technically they have no home or home base. And the word digital comes from the fact that they are earning their living online. So all digital nomads are remote workers. However, not all remote workers are digital nomads, in that you can work remotely and you can travel long-term with your work. But if you have a home base, then if you're a purist, you might say that means you're no longer a digital nomad, or you're not a digital nomad. Now, that said, it seems to me that the overall accepted definition of a digital nomad has expanded, and it is expanded to include anyone who works remotely and travels. Ideally long-term, right? So, I mean, when I got a home base after 12 years of full-time travel, I was a digital nomad, no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But then I returned to my hometown of Toronto and I got an apartment. And from that apartment, I continue to travel as and when I want. I'm on a 5-month trip right now. I'm coming back. I'm going on another month to Europe. And of course, because I work online, I work remotely, I can sustain my travels and my lifestyle and continue to work. So I would have said, I'm not a digital nomad anymore. I have a home base. And, but that definition is expanding. So now pretty much anyone who works abroad while traveling, regardless of whether or not they have a home base, could adopt the digital nomad moniker if they want. Likewise, if you can work remotely and never leave your hometown. Right? You working remotely simply means you are independent of having to be in any specific location in order to get your job done. This is something that the pandemic enabled. Because of course, when everyone locked down and everything shut down, the pandemic necessitated that everybody, all companies had to very quickly go remote or become obsolete. So now millions upon millions of people now are able to work remotely. And of this new portion of the population around the world, some of these people are interested in working abroad and taking their laptops with them and experiencing the world in a different way, in a way that is not a vacation. In my content, I like to emphasize the fact that long-term travel, when you are working remotely while you're traveling, is not the same as a vacation. And that the applications of that statement go to price, so the cost of the full-time travel lifestyle, not like what you would pay on a vacation, but then also what your rhythm of life is and how quickly or slowly you choose to travel and how you live your life and where you do this and how you work. Dramatically different from the vacation mindset that we're often in when we think of travel. So as a world, we are now redefining what travel is, and that's really exciting. Digital nomads, anyone who was a digital nomad has experienced that lifestyle prior to the pandemic, I think will now find themselves on the leading edge of a gigantic wave, a tsunami, perhaps, that is the digital nomad lifestyle. And what I do is I help people redesign their lives and figure out how to travel long-term while working remotely by going into all kinds of things, like, for example, co-living and co-working programs. What are the programs that are out there that are going to help you stay productive with your work while having both the community of other people who are location independent remote workers, but then also to having a lot of that work done for you? Because one of the things that I learned immediately is that travel as a lifestyle is a job unto itself. Figuring out how to get to places, where to stay, how to get things done, just really even just the daily tasks of life, learning to survive in a new location is a lot of work, much less getting there and doing the things and whatnot. So there are programs now that are designed to help people shorten the learning curves and also to be able to outsource some of the tasks so that they can focus a little more of their time on enjoying their lifestyle and getting their work done. So there are as many different ways to travel long-term and work abroad as there are people doing them. And that is one of the things that I am fascinated by. Because again, like I said earlier, right, there's no right or wrong way to do anything. And lifestyle design is just a very example of that. So I love talking to people and learning how they do it. I've tried my lifestyle has had many, many different iterations over the years. And I like to say I stumbled my way up the learning curve because, of course, there was no one there to teach me. And luckily now, for anyone now who wants to try long-term travel while working remotely, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's lots of people and programs to help you do that. So I like to say that I help people sort through the noise and get to where they want to go, literally and figuratively.
It's such a good segue into your keynote at the upcoming CEX. But and what I was thinking was, even now I was on the road for a week, but it is hard. It is hard to stay productive. It is hard to conquer the time zones and to find the discipline. And sometimes it's even hard if you don't have the right tools or technique to schedule a show. The amount of times I've tried to schedule my show flying back on and then being, in weird time zones and realizing I'd scheduled my show 2 hours early or 1 hour later. So I think my takeaway from that is, for sure, it has never been as easy from a technology standpoint to be able to operate, live, thrive remotely. But you need technique, you need process, you need tools, and you need a whole mindset shift in order to find, I guess, the balance between being present and ultimately productive. And so I don't know if you want to comment on that, but as you're doing that, I will put up a little bit about your keynote. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about what people can expect when you are keynoting at 2:45 p.m. on May the 4th.
Well, Joseph, I think you really said it quite brilliantly leading up to this. And in that, there's lots of the infrastructure is there for people to take their virtual businesses on the road. But there's still a learning curve. You need to choose the tools and the styles and tips and techniques that will serve you best. And when you travel, you're hedging against a lot of risks, additional risks that you wouldn't be hedging against if you were working from home. When you travel, you're constantly hedging against loss, damage, and theft of all the things, right? If you're carrying your stuff from A to B to C to D, it stands to reason that all of that stuff is now subject to the additional risks of loss, damage, and theft. These are not risks that you would necessarily have to deal with if your home office was set up and you didn't take everything with you. So there are lots of tools and techniques that you can do to hedge against those challenges. And I am the queen. I guess the financial planner in me never died, because I'm the queen of preparation and preparing to prepare for preparing. So, when you apply something like that to backups, I have backups of backups of backups of backups of backups. And that ensures, again, that if any one step of that, goes away, that's okay. I've got another way to be able to pick up. I will not lose a beat when it comes to work, right? If my laptop gets stolen, I've got the ways to access all the files that I need to immediately access in order to keep work going. And I've got ways to protect myself against, if we talk about loss, damage, theft, think about that from a virtual perspective. Right? With everything going online, we need to be a lot more attentive to digital security. And there are various, again, additional things we need to think about when we move from our home Wi-Fi network, as an example. So I like to talk about all of these. My talk is going to be full of practical tips for people who have virtual businesses and are interested in trying out the lifestyle. So we'll talk about, from a business and a technical perspective, the things that you need to think about when you're running your business from abroad. And we'll also talk about it from a lifestyle perspective, and some of the mindsets and how to find community and how to get really truly get the most of the experience. And everything that I've learned, everything that I talk about, will be things that I learned ultimately the hard way. So you don't have to.
Amazing. Well, I mean, I'm certainly going to be there because I was going anyway, and now I have context. And not only do I have context, but I also see these three different levels, right? Which is the professional hobo is the ultimate aspirational North Star, but certainly for people that are traveling a lot and struggling to find the balance. And then in general, even people that aren't traveling but have to deal with either being a remote worker or even a commuter, there clearly are ways to make this work. Now, I just want to mention to people, if you needed any reminding, this is a post on Instagram that I just put on, where you can see all of, or just some of the speakers, because there are many more speakers. But this little partnership between myself and Mr. Joe Pulizzi and CX allows you to get $200 off your pass if you use code Jaffe or Not Famous. I'm not sure if one code is better than the other. But in addition to that, you'll get a little walk-on role on a live taping of the show. And maybe we'll even get a cameo from Nora if she just happens to be walking past at the time. And also 1 hour of a little private meetup and drinks with me, on me, and just something small to be able to say, hey, let's make this slightly different, because we are creators ultimately. So when we are committed to the creator economy, we are ultimately committed to each other and being the rising tide that floats all boats. Now, Nora is a very gracious guest. She is giving you a little bit of a gift as well. So tell people about their free gift just by virtue of watching you today.
Well, as a thank you for sticking in on this amazing conversation that we've had, I am offering a free gift. It's a checklist of 10 things to do before you travel long term. This will help you cover the bases so that you can hit the road effectively, stress-free, productively. You will know that you have all the major points covered or addressed. It'll give you a lot of food for thought and tons of resources therein. So I highly recommend getting that checklist and seeing where it goes, because it leads everybody down different rabbit holes. And there's a few rabbit holes to go down. That's for sure.
I am downloading it as we speak, but also if you are actually going to go and supersize this commitment, and you're buying into this wonderful, wonderful lifestyle, Nora wrote a book, and a book that will show you how to, amongst other things, get free accommodation around the world. How much did you save? $100,000? Did I get that number right?
I saved over $100,000 in my first 10 years abroad. Now, I'm also going to say that this is not just for digital nomads and remote workers. And in fact, one of the things that I do in the book, and I have special sections, I outline 5 different forms of free accommodation, how to get them, where to find the gigs, how to stand out, make sure that you land the opportunities that you're interested in getting, but then also how that particular style of free accommodation matches up with being a digital nomad and working remotely concurrently, because some are better than others. For example, if you're volunteering in trade for free accommodation, you're having an amazing, culturally immersive experience. You're doing something really interesting that, you know, is way off the tourist beaten path, but that takes a lot of time. So if you're volunteering for 25 hours a week, and then you're working full time for another 30 to 40 hours a week, then suddenly, and I personally experienced this, I kind of felt like I traded one rat race in for another. House sitting, by contrast, is a great way to enjoy the comforts of home and to get a lot of work done while you're experiencing life in a different location in the world. So there's definitely lots of pros and cons to each of those. And in that book, I definitely show people how to make the most of that and what to avoid.
Well, this has been guest number 358, Nora Dunn, the professional hobo. If you want to find out more about her love for train travel, for example, more in-depth knowledge about natural disasters or tropical diseases, or more importantly, some tips for this idea of whether you're a long-distance traveler, whether you're a remote worker, aren't we all these days? She will be keynoting at CX on May 4th at 2:45 p.m. And if you register for CEX, use the code Jaffe or Not Famous, you'll get $200 off your fee. You'll get to have a drink with me, or maybe 2. You'll get to walk on the show as well. But most importantly, you're going for Nora, aren't you? And I mean, I am. Leading up to the event, you can follow Nora on the Twitter, on Instagram. Also subscribe to the Remote Work and Travel Show on YouTube, because at the end of the day, Nora is a creator. She is a professional creator. She is a storyteller, and she's documenting these this incredible journey, this incredible life. So you can almost voyeuristically get to be a part of that as well. Nora, I can't wait to meet you IRL. And any exotic travel leading up to May 2nd through 4th?
Not so much exotic leading up to it, but immediately after CEX, I'm doing another train. I have an unhealthy love of long distance train travel. And I've recently set my sights on the United States, and I've done last summer, I circumnavigated the United States by train. Last month, I did a train ride that I didn't do the first time around, which is the most scenic train ride in North America from San Francisco to Chicago. And right after CEX, instead of flying back home as any normal person would do, instead I'm meandering over to LA, where I'm going to catch the Southwest Chief, which is a 3-day, 54 hours of train travel, give or take, and to Chicago. So that's going to be my fun bit after that. And then shortly after that, I'm speaking at Bansko Nomad Fest in Bulgaria. So that will be an interesting experience as well. But I will tell you, I just want to say, regarding CEX, I don't know whether or not I'm more excited to be speaking at CEX or just simply attending it, because I love the idea that we are all content creators across industries. I'm used to kibitzing with content creators who are in the travel industry, but that's just a very small portion of content creators. So I want to share ideas. I want to learn from content creators across all industries and modalities and formats, from video to audio to written and beyond. And then overlay all of that with a Web3 aspect. And we are all entrepreneurs on the leading edge, creating new economies as we go. So I'm really excited to see what CEX is going to kick out, because I think there's going to be a lot of change makers there, and there's going to be a lot to learn from some amazing people.
That was a little bit of a value add for you, Mr. Joe Pulizzi, but I will tell you, if you want to kibitz with content creators, come kibitz with us. Nora, it's been a pleasure, and I'm thankful to say that the little Wi-Fi funk in the middle seemed to have improved itself, and so you know, the value add, the conversation, the relationship was not just special for me, it was also special for Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
And I will be back tomorrow, and of course, hope to see many of you in Phoenix, Arizona. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.